No one is above the law. Those 5 words should be simple for America's top diplomat to affirm. But when Ted Lieu pressed Marco Rubio on whether Trump must follow a unanimous Supreme Court order, Rubio's response revealed something that should alarm every American who believes in constitutional government. This wasn't evasion. It was a blueprint for how power plans to operate above accountability.
Recognized Representative Lieu.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Secretary Rubio, thank you for being here today. As a member of the legislative branch, I don't have a special exemption to violate the law. You would agree with me, wouldn't you, that in America, no one is above the law?
Of course.
Okay. And in our system of government, it's Congress that makes the laws, the executive branch that executes the laws, and the judicial branch, when there's a dispute, that says what the law is. Is that right?
Within the context of separation of powers, yes.
Okay. And the reason that due process is so fundamental to America is before we put the entire weight of the federal government and snatch someone off the street, we might want to ask, hey, do you have something to say about that? Might we have the wrong person? And in the case of Mr. Garcia, the Trump administration admitted in court that they mistakenly deported him to El Salvador. The Supreme Court, in a 9-0 decision, said the Trump administration has to facilitate getting him back. Do you believe the administration has to follow that Supreme Court order?
Well, I don't believe he was wrongfully deported. He's an Salvadorian citizen
That's not
illegally
my question.
in the
Do you
United
believe
States.
the Trump administration has to follow the Supreme Court 9-0 unanimous decision?
Within the context of separation of powers. That
Okay.
No court can tell me how to conduct foreign policy. They can't tell me what I have to say to a president of another country, nor do I need to tell them what I told the president of another country, because I can't
I'm
conduct
just
foreign
asking you,
policy.
do you believe the Trump administration has to follow the unanimous Supreme Court
I believe we are
decision?
following it.
Okay, so my next question is, what steps have you or the State Department taken to facilitate the return of Mr. Garcia, who was mistakenly deported to El Salvador?
The conduct of our foreign policy is an executive function, and how I conduct
I'm
it,
just
I don't need
asking
to share
you.
with you.
Well,
and
let me
I
ask you
don't
this:
share with the court.
Have you or the State Department taken any steps to facilitate?
We've taken
the
steps,
return?
but I'm not going to tell you what they are, and I don't have to, because we conduct the foreign policy of the United States, and I can't conduct diplomacy with a
And
foreign
so-
leader if I come to committees and tell you what they said to me,
Right.
what I said to them,
you-
and more certainly a
Now,
court can't
so
tell me to say
you
that
have
either.
taken steps to facilitate Mr. Garcia's return.
We've made those.
And-
We've made that assertion, and we've made those assertions in court, and
All right,
we've
thank
complied.
you. I appreciate that. I'd like to ask you now about Ukraine. On August 24th, 2022, you tweeted the following. In the past 6 months since Putin's criminal invasion of Ukraine, Ukrainians have shown incredible bravery and strength as they fight to defend their homeland. On Ukraine's Independence Day, the free world applauds their courage and celebrates Ukraine's sovereignty. And then also in 2022, you said the people of Ukraine are tough people who will never accept being ruled by Putin. I want to ask you, I assume you continue to believe what you said in 2022, right? That we should celebrate Ukraine's sovereignty and that the people of Ukraine will never accept being ruled by Putin, right?
Yeah, that's why we're trying to end the war.
All right. On April 30th, 2018, you tweeted, glad to see State Department confirm delivery of Javelin anti-tank missiles to Ukraine. The U.S. should continue empowering Ukraine and other allies to defend against the threat of Russian aggression. You would agree with your prior statement that the U.S. should continue to support Ukraine against Russian aggression, right?
We've supported them more than anyone in the world.
All right. Unfortunately, it appears Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth went rogue and decided unilaterally to stop support for Ukraine earlier this year. Various news organizations reported that Secretary Hegseth paused military support to Ukraine without President Trump's knowledge. I'm going to read you from one article dated May 6. Quote, Pete Hegseth canceled military aid flights to Ukraine just a week into Trump's second term without the president even knowing, according to Reuters. The order initially sparked mass confusion within the administration as national security officials in the White House, the Pentagon, and the State Department couldn't figure out who ordered the halt in flights. This is yet another example of the chaos and lack of cohesion that Hegseth has brought to the Pentagon from day one. Did Secretary Hegseth tell you before he ordered the halt in flights to Ukraine of military weapons?
I can't comment on that because I don't remember that. I don't remember ever hearing that, to what you're claiming now.
So your understanding is he never told you he was going to halt these
I
flights?
just know we're providing them assistance now, but the war ultimately has to end.
In 2016, you stated the following: from his repression of the Russian people and the assassination of his critics, to his dangerous invasion of Ukraine, the occupation of Crimea, to his threats against our NATO allies in Central and Eastern Europe, to the war crimes committed by Russian forces, Putin's Russia is a threat to global stability. You would agree with your prior statement, right, that Putin's Russia is a threat to global stability?
I would agree that in my role as Secretary of State, my job is to bring Russia to the table to end a war, and that's what we're trying to do right now. We're trying to end a war so that more people don't die.
Thank you. And trying to end the war, I simply note that Putin on Palm Sunday launched a barrage of missiles, killed a bunch of civilians. Right before his conversation with Trump recently, he launched a bunch of missiles, killed a bunch of civilians. So clearly, Putin is giving the middle finger to you and to the president. I urge you to defeat Putin on the battlefield. That's the only way to get him to the negotiating table. I yield back.
Chair now recognizes.
What Representative Ted Lieu did in that hearing room was a constitutional stress test, and Marco Rubio failed it spectacularly. Lieu's questioning revealed a dangerous mindset where constitutional obligations become optional suggestions and Supreme Court orders become diplomatic inconveniences. Lieu began with fundamental principles. No one is above the law, and Congress makes laws. The executive executes them. The judicial branch interprets them. Rubio agreed to these principles, but when pressed to apply them to a specific case, his agreement crumbled into constitutional defiance. The Garcia case exposes how abstract principles collide with real accountability. The Supreme Court ruled unanimously that the Trump administration must facilitate the return of someone they admitted was mistakenly deported. Yet when Lieu asked if the administration must follow this order, Rubio's response was chilling. No court can tell me how to conduct foreign policy. This isn't about foreign policy nuance. It's about whether constitutional separation of powers means anything when inconvenient. Rubio essentially argued that executive officials can ignore judicial orders by claiming diplomatic privilege. That's not separation of powers. That's executive supremacy disguised as constitutional theory. The legal concept at stake is judicial review. Established in Marbury v. Madison, courts don't just suggest what the law requires, they determine it with binding authority. When Rubio says courts can't tell him what to do, he's rejecting 2 centuries of constitutional precedent. Notice Rubio's tactical retreat. When cornered, he claimed they are following the order but refused to explain how. This creates an accountability black hole where compliance becomes whatever the executive says it is, with no external verification possible. It's the classic authoritarian move: claim obedience while ensuring no one can verify the claim. Lieu then pivoted to Ukraine, using Rubio's own words against him. In 2018 and 2022, Rubio championed Ukrainian sovereignty and condemned Putin's aggression, but when confronted with Secretary Hegseth's unilateral halt to Ukrainian aid, Rubio's constitutional spine disappeared. He claimed ignorance about major policy decisions affecting his own department. This pattern reveals the deeper problem. Rubio treats constitutional principles like campaign slogans, applicable when politically useful, discardable when costly. Ukraine's sovereignty matters when tweeting to constituents, but becomes negotiable when challenging administrative chaos. The practical consequences are immediate. When top officials model constitutional defiance, career professionals notice. Why should State Department lawyers insist on legal compliance when the Secretary suggests courts lack authority? This erosion cascades through the entire system. Foreign partners lose confidence when officials ignore court orders. Congressional oversight becomes theater when administrators claim privilege over basic questions. Lieu's questioning strategy was methodical and devastating. He established agreed principles, applied them to specific cases, then documented the gap between stated beliefs and actual behavior. He used Rubio's own words and constitutional requirements to expose the inconsistency. The Ukraine exchange showed how administrative chaos becomes normalized. Hegseth apparently halted military aid without presidential knowledge or interagency coordination. This isn't governance, it's improvisation with global consequences. Yet Rubio suggested this freelancing was acceptable as long as ultimate goals remained unchanged. What should alarm every American is how casually Rubio dismissed constitutional constraints. He didn't argue the Garcia case was Walsley decided. He simply claimed executive authority to ignore judicial orders and departmental coordination requirements. That's not conservative governance, that's authoritarian methodology. The solution requires immediate action. Congress must use oversight powers aggressively, demanding specific timelines for court order compliance. The judiciary must enforce orders with concrete consequences, and citizens must treat constitutional defiance as a civic emergency, not a partisan disagreement. This hearing wasn't about policy differences. It was about whether constitutional government survives when officials decide which parts of the Constitution they'll follow. Lieu's questions forced that choice into the open. Rubio's answers provided a disturbing preview of governance without constitutional limits.